I can't believe it is September already. This is unbelievable that we've already turned the calendar. This for me, I can't speak for Janice, but this for me is the beginning of the payoff in moving to California 2 years ago. Because after having spent 20 years in New England, September is a bittersweet month for me as a New Englander because I'm a summer boy. I love the warmth, and September in New England means the end of summer and the end of warmth and closing up the pools and no more beach days, and it's very, very, very sad. Now, between now and the middle of October, there probably is no prettier spot on earth to be than New England. How many of you ever been to New England in the autumn? It is amazing, the colors of the leaves and the apple picking. We went apple picking there's a place called Oakhurst outside of L.A. last year, and they advertise apple picking. I'm sorry. You go to New England, I mean, we're putting on sweaters, changing the clothes, it's a great time of year. But the problem in New England is that once that last leaf falls and the first frost comes, you have 5 months of drab, dreary winter to look forward to. So, for summer boy to see September and now live in a place where summer stretches on into October and November. You guys have been keeping this a secret from the rest of us. There's another reason I like September. As a pastor, is September for us in the church, and you're picking up this vibe today, it means the beginning of a new ministry season. You know, we, like you out in New England, we ease off the throttle in the summer. We let most ministries just have a time of rest. We do Vacation Bible School, but that's about it. But in September, it's exciting. Everybody comes back charged up, and we get all the ministries going. We refuel the engines, fire everything up, unleash everyone, connect them to ministries. And it's an exciting, exciting time. And I sense that same energy here. We got Pastor Jordan next week. A few weeks after, I'm not sure exactly what the date is, but we're going to be in our building soon. We get to participate. I think, is this the first time that we'll be joining with the street fair? Guys, that's huge. That's amazing. We'll put ourselves on more than one map and let our town know that we're here. I met with a group that helps with the hospitality a couple weeks ago, and they're all fired up. And I hope you'll each pick up a copy of this. At the end, this is a new fact sheet that explains how we run the hospitality ministry. And the reason we did this is to allow people to get on board and easily jump in. It's only a couple pages. And then there's a sign-up sheet. Sign up for that and help with greeting, help with cooking coffee and snacks for afterwards. These are important ministries. So this is an exciting time of year. And I want to call on some of this energy and some of this enthusiasm during this month, bookended around Pastor Jordan's visit. If everything goes as we hope and he comes, you still got to deal with me for a few weeks afterwards because he's not going to come the next week. So sorry. You got to put up with me for a little bit. So what I'd like to do this month is talk about 3 areas where we can give to God and serve Him. See, God's given each of us 3 amazing gifts that He then asks that we turn around and give to Him. And you know what those gifts are? Time, your talents, and your treasure. Say that. Your time, talents, and your treasure. So nobody should say, and especially after seeing that video, no one should say, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm so ungifted. No. God has given you time. God has given you talents and treasure. And this morning, we want to talk about the gift of time that God has given to us. So let's pray, and let's dive into God's Word. Father, thank you for the privilege you're giving us to just sit together for 30 minutes or so and look into the Bible. No one's going to run in here and shut us down. Thank you for the freedom we have in this country to do what we're doing. Thank you for the importance of it. We need to be fed. We are spiritually hungry if you don't feed us. So Jesus, would you bless this time? Give us attentive hearts and minds. Help us to be all in and let your word do its work in our hearts. We ask this in your name. Amen. So I saw this funny plaque in a gift shop not too long ago. It's a little longish, but it was funny. It made me laugh. It's called A Day Off. So let me read it to you. So, you want a day off? Well, let's take a look at what you're asking for. There are 365 days available for work. There are 52 weeks per year in which you already have 2 days off, leaving 261 days available for work. Since you spend 16 hours each day away from work, you've used up 170 days, leaving only 91 days available. You spend 30 minutes each day on coffee break. That accounts for 23 days each year. With 1 hour lunch period each day, you've used up another 46 days, leaving 22 days available for work. You normally spend 2 days per year on sick leave. This leaves you only 20 days for work. We're off for 5 holidays each year, so your available working time is down to 15 days. We generally give you 14 vacation days per year, which leaves just 1 day available for work. And I'll be doggone if you're going to take another day off. Oh, don't you wish it was really like that? Yeah, we just had to work 1 day a year. I don't know about his math, but the plaque begs the question, does it not? Where does time go? You ever asked yourself that? Time's such a weird thing. There are times where it just goes so slow and drags. Teenagers know that. I remember distinctly waiting to get my driver's license at 16, and it took like forever. And then when I finally got my license, there was a glitch with our insurance, so I had to wait another week or two. And then I walked in one day, and Dad threw me the car keys and said, "Son, go get us a gallon of milk." Yes! And then there are those days where you want time to slow down, where it's just the other way. It just goes too fast. So in third grade, when my daughter Hannah was in third grade, and she's our only child, we bought one of those picture frames that has room for each of the 12 school pictures and put it on the wall, and of course it was filled up through the third grade, and I remember saying to myself, well, at least we have 9 slots left, a lot of time. And then fourth grade, and well, we got 8 years left, and then 7, and then I began to have this sensation as a pastor of time going faster than I wanted it to go. And it's like, whoa, slow down here. There's no need to hurry here. And that plaque's on our wall, and it's all filled up, and my daughter's 31 now, and it's like, what is that? So weird how time can sometimes drag like a glacier, just 1 inch at a time, and then there's other occasions where it's like water in a bathtub. You know what I mean? So what does the Bible have to teach about time? Open your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, because wise old King Solomon, who we talked about last week, and we mentioned Ecclesiastes last week if you were here, he writes an essay about time in Ecclesiastes that has some interesting things to say to us, some lessons to draw. You might recognize some of these verses because there was a group called the Byrds who in the 1960s turned part of this scripture into a song. To everything, yeah. Ecclesiastes 3, where Solomon writes, "For everything," verse 1, "there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. There's a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to cast away." Let's skip down to verse 9. What gain does a worker have for his toil? I've seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He's made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he's put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better than for us to be joyful and to do good as long as we live. Also, that everyone should eat, drink, take pleasure in his toil. This is God's gift to us. I see in what Solomon has written here in this beautiful poem a number of things, a number of lessons he makes about time. And the first is this, and write this down on your note sheet. Remember that time is a gift. Yes? You know what I'm talking about. You know what Solomon's talking about. Do you have a right to be here? To be on this earth, to be breathing this air right now? Can you demand the universe that you be here? Did you choose to be here? No. You didn't buy your way here. Why are you here? You are here by the sovereign will of Almighty God, who looked down from eternity and said, it would give me pleasure to put you on this earth. It's a gift from God. And it's important for us to remember this truth, because when we forget this truth, we humans can slip into one of two errors: either arrogance or despair. There's all kinds of people forgetting that life is a gift who are filled with arrogance. They strut about the earth like they are a king, a queen, a little god, like they own everything, like they can command anything. They deserve to be here. Kind of the Donald Trumps of this world, if you know what I mean. And I think Solomon would say to them, wait a minute, no, life is a gift. You shouldn't be arrogant at all. Your life was given to you without your consent, and guess what? It can be taken from you without your consent. Sure, you have a little control of things. You can change things, tweak things. I gave you that power, God says, and you should. You should be a good steward. But you are not in control. I am. Life is a gift. Boy, was I reminded of that this last week when I experienced my first earthquake. You heard about it? Wow. Now, you natives, you might think, oh, he's so cute, his first earthquake. And no, I'm sorry. I was sitting out on the balcony, and I was doing some writing at 7:30, I think it was Tuesday night, and all of a sudden, it happened without warning. I mean, like a Disney ride. But it wasn't the shaking that unnerved me. And I'm from the Midwest and lived in New England. I've never experienced this before. It was the noise, because the ground rumbled with such a gravelly groan, and it bounced off those foothills. That's what freaked me out. And I experienced something that I have seldom felt in my life, and I haven't felt it for a long time: helplessness. I honestly did not know what to do in that moment. And then, of course, now it was a 4.4. Come to find out, it was 2 towns over in Laverne. Oh, stop with the nothing. All you Californians. And the next day, the meme popped. There's this meme, this picture that always gets circulated every time there's an earthquake, and they just tweak it for the last earthquake. It shows 3 lawn chairs, and one of them is knocked over, and on the top of the picture is, "We will rebuild." And I talked to the native Californians, and when they've told me about the earthquakes they've experienced over the years, most of the time, they're not even sure if they felt it. I think we felt an earthquake. There was no doubt about this. And I was glad to hear the news people say afterwards, this was a strong quake. It was very short, but very intense. And it was a very brief reminder that this earth we live on is volatile, and my body is fragile, and I don't have nearly the power and control over my life that I thought I did. Life is a gift. There's no room for arrogance, but neither is there room for despair. I know a lot of people, that's not their sin. Their problem is not that they see themselves as all important. They look at the vastness of the universe. They look at the galaxies, and they look at the billions of people on the planet, and what do they say to themselves? I'm meaningless. I'm worth no more than the fly. Well, those people as well, and if this is any of you thinking that you don't matter, your life is too inconsequential, you also need to call to mind right now that your life is a gift from God. And you are here because He willed you to be here. He wants you on this earth. You couldn't matter any more than that. And He wants you here to do something with your life, like that video said. And that brings us to our second point. Let's jot this down. Time is a gift, but also time is a trust. Write that down. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 3, I perceive that there is nothing better for us than to be joyful and to do good as long as we live. That last phrase is important. When something is given to you in trust, what does that mean? It means that somebody who owns something gives it to you for a time, and you're to take care of it. And then, at a later point, you hand their property back to them, and you have to give an account of how you used it. That's what a trust is. When Janice and I were in our early married life, some friends of ours in our church allowed us to stay rent-free in their house for a year. He wanted to go and study for a year. And so basically they entrusted their house to us. We could stay rent-free as long as we took care of things. Well, I knew nothing about yard equipment, and I destroyed his lawnmower. Forgot to change the oil once, and guess what I had to do when they got back? I had to buy him a new lawnmower because it was placed in my trust. And that's what time is like. God gives us the gift of time like a trust, and then He expects us to use it to bring about good in this life. Time is a trust. You want to make God smile? Well, then use the gift of time and the gift of life that He's given to you and increase His goodness on the earth. Remember, we made this point a couple weeks ago. God created the world perfect, but He did not create it complete. When God created the world, it was filled with His goodness, filled with His love, filled with His beauty, and it was perfect. But guess what? God wanted to bring more goodness and more beauty into the world. Only this time, He wasn't going to create it, at least by Himself. This time, He was going to create it through us. That's the purpose of our lives. And so one of the greatest adventures of a human life is to take this moral journey where you stop living only for yourself and your own pleasure, and you grow in your life and you come to a place where you start living more and more for the love of God and the love of your neighbor. That's what your life is for. And so people ask, did you have a successful life? Did you have a good life? Well, you could have different answers to that question. The Donald Trumps of this world again will say, oh, you want to know what a successful life is? How big is your house? How big is your bank account? How many women do you have on your arm? How many Facebook friends do you have? That's a sign of how successful you are. But what would Jesus say? No. Did you bring more goodness into this earth? Because you are here, did the kingdom of God grow? Is there more love? Is there more beauty than was here before? And it's interesting, talking about Mr. Trump, and what I want to say next is not a political statement, but a moral statement. We saw a vivid demonstration this week of the two different paths. With the passing of John McCain, we saw tribute to a man who modeled for people, not perfectly, he was not a perfect man, but a life of integrity and service. And it was asked more than once, who would you rather be like, a man like this or a man like this? And I think each of us as followers of Christ know the answer to that. The hero's journey of going and growing from selfishnness to service, from lust to love, from greed to generosity. That hero's journey is at the heart of so many famous stories in movies. Yes? Can you think of a movie where that's the point of it? The main character grows from being selfish to loving others. What comes to mind? How about Beauty and the Beast? Yes? He has to learn how to love before the last rose petal falls. How about, what are some other ones that come to mind? Avatar? Seriously. I forget the name of the main character, but at the beginning of the movie, he's selfish. He's got a new body now because he was broken up, and he has to learn to love the Avatarians, or whatever the name of it. Christmas Carol is the classic example of the hero's journey as Scrooge learns to go from greed into generosity. You know another one? That this is in my top 5. This is just a few notches below Ben-Hur in terms of my favorite movie. And this movie I'm going to mention in a second has been officially designated as one of the most profoundly spiritual movies in all time? Groundhog Day. With Bill Murray. Seriously. That movie changed my life. It's the story of King Solomon. Bill Murray plays this snarky weatherman, Phil Connors, and he's all about himself. And he gets stuck in this time loop, and he wakes up every morning, and it's Groundhog Day. And he wakes up the next morning. He remembers what happened the day before, but nobody else does. And so that gives him the power to learn and to experiment with things. And like Solomon, how many of you saw Groundhog Day? You better see it after this talk. Like Solomon, remember Solomon, he tried to do life without God, and so he experimented with all these things. So Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, he starts with money, materialism. Because of his power, he knows where the Brinks truck is at and where the guards are at, so he can steal the money. And then he buys whatever he wants, experiences whatever he wants. Guess how long that lasts before he's bored with it. So then he tries pleasure. He tries to seduce any women he wants, except for Andie MacDowell. That's the love interest. She won't be seduced. He's got to learn how to love her. He tries pleasure. There's a scene where he's in a restaurant. The table's filled with pastries. He stuffs this eclair into his mouth all in one shot. Andie MacDowell's looking at him disgusted. And she says, "Aren't you worried about love handles?" He says, "I'm not worried about anything. I don't even floss." But how long do you think loving pleasure lasts and satisfies him? Not long at all. He then shifts to where he learns things. He learns French poetry. That doesn't work in the end. He starts to build things. He learns how to ice sculpt, and that doesn't work. And then, like Solomon, he ends up saying, it's all meaningless. It's all meaningless. And he tries to kill himself over and over again, but he wakes up the next day. And what does Bill Murray have to learn? He has to learn what Solomon had to learn, that there's only meaning in life if you learn to love God and learn to love a neighbor. And, of course, when he learns, that's not quite how it shakes out. God isn't mentioned in the movie, but it's the point. It's why they call it the most spiritual movie, one of the most spiritual movies ever made. He has to learn that life, that time is a trust, and that the point of this life is not to waste it all on yourself and your own pleasure and your own happiness, but to learn to share the love of God with other people. Remember that time is a gift. Remember that time is a trust. The third thing that Solomon would teach us is remember that time comes in seasons. Time, write that down. He says, there is a time for every purpose under heaven and a season for every activity. If you really want to mess up your life, if you really want to screw it up good, how many of you want to just botch it up? You want your life to be just totally ruined. Anybody? Kids? No? You're a Dodger fan. You're already screwed up. So yeah. So, because if you do want to ruin your life, then ignore this truth that Solomon teaches, that life comes in season. Now, what's a season? I like to define it this way. A season is characterized by particular circumstances, opportunities, and limitations. A season, and think about winter that's coming, although you don't have winter, but what are the circumstances, the particular circumstances of winter? It's colder, yes? Snow, yeah, right. Rain. Fog. Shorter days. Shorter daylight, yeah. Okay, opportunities. What are the unique opportunities to winter that are not available at other seasons of the year? Oh, yeah, the clothes you wear. And it's kind of fun to put on, thick socks. Snow skiing. Can't do that in the summer. How about the holidays? Aren't Thanksgiving and Christmas like the most amazing holidays? So, yeah. Yeah. How about limitations? Every season has unique circumstances, opportunities, and limitations. What are the limitations of winter? You don't want to go outside in the fog. That would be, well, you can, but, that'd look kind of weird. Yeah. Because seasons are like this, they come with defined opportunities, circumstances, and limitations. There's another thing about seasons that the Bible wants you to know, that seasons can be predicted and prepared for. Yes? You should never be caught off guard by the coming of a new season, because there's always a rhythm to them. There's an order to them. And so you don't wait till the first snowfall to cut your firewood. Yeah? You don't wait till the summer and go, oh, I didn't plant my garden. You don't wait till your balcony is shaking like the pirate ride before you say, I don't have an earthquake kit. Because of the way seasons unfold, you can prepare for them. What does this have to do with life and living it well? Only everything. Huh? There are seasons to our lives, and we need to learn to recognize them and then take steps accordingly to prepare for what's coming. The Bible says in the Psalms, teach me, Lord, to measure my days. It's a skill you learn. Paul wrote, redeem the time because the days are evil. Make the most of every opportunity. There are things that you should do in your teens to get ready for your 20s. And parents, this is where you're along for the ride. Your job as a parent is not to be your child's best friend. Your job as a parent is to train and mentor and prepare your child so that when they enter adulthood, you can give to the world a somewhat reasonably balanced and responsible creature. It's not to be your child's best friend. Make your bed, do your homework, be in by 8. I hate you! That's fine, but make your bed, do your homework, be in by 8. Ah! That was a quick illustration of good parenting. You can be their best friend later on in life. My daughter and my wife have a great relationship now, but we made sure that we were her parents when she was younger. And there are things that you do in your 20s that you have to get ready for to prepare for the 30s. And there are things you do in your 30s to prepare for the 40s. And things you do in the 30s to prepare for your 60s. And you see what I'm saying? And God wants your life to unfold well. So he tells you that life comes in seasons. What's frightening for Janice and I in this great adventure that we're on, and I don't know if you all know our story, and I won't go into it overly long, but 2 years ago, we sold our house in Connecticut. I was a pastor for 20 years. I announced to my church I was stepping down. We were moving to California, so I could take a year off to write. What's frightening about this is the season in which I'm doing it. We're in our 50s. You're not supposed to do stuff like this in your 50s. You're supposed to be shoring up your savings. You're not supposed to be depleting your savings because the clock is ticking. I've taught this my whole life. I'm breaking all these rules that I myself taught, but I've also taught living by faith. God just had the nerve to call me out on it. But it was also because I was recognizing the season of life that I was in that I did this. Because I've written stories since I was a boy. It's a sickness I have. If you write, you have this pathology. My mind is always cranking out stories and projects. I've always wanted to write. I was born to do this in part, but I've never given that part of my life a chance to really be nurtured. And recognizing that I'm in my 50s, this season of life, I said to myself, if I don't want to be that guy who on his deathbed looks back at his life and says, boy, did I waste my life. Why didn't I ever take a chance? Why didn't I really go for what I loved? So many people regret at the end of their days things that they didn't do. They played it safe. I have no idea what will happen with what we're doing, but what I do know is because we took this step, there are things that now exist that wouldn't have existed before, screenplays and books and a new ministry. There I was on a set doing background editing with Captain Kirk Pine a month and a half ago, and he's beating up a guy in a fat suit. And I got out of my body for a minute and looked down with a smile, and I went, You're in Hollywood, and that's Chris Pine beating up a guy in a fat suit. That never would have happened if we hadn't taken this chance. Here I am in Los Banos, California. Never even heard of Los Banos before. No, it's not the toilet, it's the baths. Get it right, Mary. having one of the best summers I've had in a long, long time with a precious group of people. Why am I privileged to have this experience? Because I said, Jesus, catch me. In a couple weeks, I get to speak at a men's prayer breakfast in one of the largest churches in LA and share this burden in my heart for what I call purity training. One of my book projects is about how do you walk in sexual discipline in this crazy world of ours. It's a big burden of mine. The church is not doing this part of life well, and as you know, culture is falling apart because of this. And then this fall, I'm going to be able to lead a men's retreat, a whole weekend retreat where I get to share this message. It's baby steps, very small things, but none of this would have happened if I hadn't recognized the season of life I was in and said, God help, but here I come. You got to know that life comes in seasons, and just you do what Janice and I are doing. You don't let go of his hand. You don't stop seeking him. I've never prayed more in my life. I've never read the Bible more in my life. I want to make absolutely certain I am keeping in step with what God is saying. I don't want to miss a step, because if I do, it'll be a train wreck. And that's how you navigate through life's seasons. I don't know where you're at in life right now. Good season, bad season, but grab hold of God. Seek him as you've never sought him before. He will meet you. He'll speak to you. He'll encourage you. He'll lead you if you let him. Which is actually a good segue to our final point this morning. Remember this, Solomon would say, remember, earthly life is short and spiritual life is eternal. Remember that earthly life is short and spiritual life is eternal. Solomon writes, God has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has set eternity in the hearts of men. It's what we said last week when we talked about heaven, if you were here. And if you weren't, I would encourage you to get online and use the new technology that Ben was talking about. You can actually watch a video of the teaching last week if you weren't here and enjoy it. And it's pretty cool what's being set up. But we talked about heaven last week, and it's what we said. Friends, you weren't made for just this earth. You weren't made for just this life. You were made to live eternally. And to help us remember this, God created at the very beginning of time a very unique gift which he gave to the human race to help them remember these truths that life is eternal. Anybody guess what the gift was that God gave us at the very beginning of time to help us stay connected to him? Day of rest, Mary said. Genesis 2. After God created the earth, he rested on the seventh day and blessed it. The Sabbath. The Sabbath has so much to teach us about living life well. Now, as you hopefully know, the Sabbath has both a God part to it and a human part. What's the God part of the Sabbath? Well, most people understand that about the Sabbath. It's the day that we're supposed to be in worship. It's the day we come together with God's people. It's a commandment. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And I'm telling you, without this commandment, left to myself, I would drift from God. I would gradually move God out of my life. It's what we do in our sinfulness. Thank God that he's driven this stake called the Sabbath day into our schedule. It's like one of those escape ramps on a mountain road, for the runaway trucks. Here you are, that your life's out of control. You've been forgetting about God. You haven't read the Bible, days without number. Everything's falling apart. What do? Suddenly you see the sign, Sabbath day ramp, exit now. And you swerve into church. And God catches you and forgives you and cleanses you and renews you. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come up to me and say at the end of church, Pastor Bear, I'm so glad that I was at church today. I feel so good right now, but you got to know I didn't feel good at the beginning of the day. I didn't even want to come. I didn't want to get out of bed. How many of you ever felt that way? And afterwards, you just like, that's the power of the Sabbath. There's also a human part, though, to the Sabbath. On the Sabbath day, what are we supposed to do? we're supposed to rest. We're to save time for God, but we're also to save time for rest. Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man. It's a commandment of love that God gave to us to help us. He knows that we need rest. We're not robots to run 24/7. And what do we mean by rest? God means three things as we wrap up. The first thing is stop working. Exodus 20, verse 8, remember the Sabbath day, on it you shall not do any work. And by work, God means that which you do for a paycheck. That which you do from the 9 to 5. Your labor. It doesn't mean stop physical activity. The dumb Pharisees, the legalists, took this life-giving command that God gave us to honor a Sabbath day, and they began to heap traditions on it to the point where they said, you can't walk more than a mile on the Sabbath day. And if your oxen falls in a ditch, you can't get it out because you'll be working. And if your neighbor needs help, you can't go because you'll be working. Oh, the snarky Pharisees. And then you saw what happened when Jesus comes along and tries to heal somebody on the Sabbath day, tries to relieve somebody and bring God's goodness into the life of somebody. And the Pharisees, they go, praise God, you're working. That's not what the commandment means. The work is what you do for a living. You don't let that alarm clock wake you up in the morning. You don't have to make the commute on the Sabbath day. You can breathe. Secondly, start playing. Yes, you heard me right. Here come the Pharisees, the legalists, the fundamentalists again, who say, you've got to just, and I've seen this, I've walked in homes where this is the kids are strapped in their Sunday best, sitting on the couch like little stuffed animals, and they cannot move, and don't you smile! Oh no! It's not what the Sabbath is all about. This is a day to be renewed in the presence of God. You've come and you've spent this wonderful time with the Lord and His people. Now, I love the Sabbath day. Growing up, I love coming home, ripping off the suit and tie, getting on my shorts and sweats, and playing with my family. And being with people and having barbecues and pool parties. Only in New England, you don't do that after September. And it's exciting. And I made sure as a pastor that my daughter, I made absolutely sure of this, that she did not have to grow up resenting Sundays, hating Sundays, because that was the day God took her dad away from her. And that was the day that dad was always too tired for it. No. Even if I was tired, I made sure that that was a day for family fun, for enjoying this earth that God has given. Taste and see God is good. And I'd like to think that attitude I had contributed in some way to my daughter, because when she grew up and left home and began to find her own way, every place she's gone to, Australia, New Zealand, Los Angeles, every place she's gone, one of the first order of businesses for her has been to find a church and connect with God's people. And I'd like to think in some small way that one of the reasons she's made that a priority is that we played on Sunday. So you stop your work, you start playing, and one more thing, and we'll wrap up. You learn to savor quietness. Write that down. I love the image of God as the shepherd in Psalm 23 who leads me beside still waters, quiet waters, and then that next phrase, He restores my soul. Quietness restores our souls. And we need that quietness. And how do you find it? Well, you don't find it by accident. You have to go and find it. You have to go and get it. Janice and I love hikes. I've shared that with you. And this time of year, we'd go up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, a beautiful part of the country. And there was a famous hike called Sabaday Falls that we took a few years ago. Sabaday is an old colloquial word for Sabbath, interestingly. And I said, with a name like that, it's got to be a good hike. So we pulled into the parking lot to go and take this hike. Didn't start well, because there was a car that was in the parking lot, it was pretty filled up, whose alarm had been set off. And the manufacturer of this alarm, I hope they've gone out of business. Because the car, literally, there was a voice from the car going, I've been tampered with, I've been tampered with. And then it would boom 3 sirens. Meep, 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 I've been tampered with. We almost turned around to take another hike, but we decided, no, let's go for it. So we walked onto the path, and thankfully that sound quickly faded away. I've been tampered with. We found a path, started meandering along a stream, and that was nice, but we still didn't find a quiet place because there was a ton of people and dogs, and we all know dogs are the noisiest animals. Sorry, Jim and Charlotte, but they got this little poodle last night we got together, and these mournful woes. Why do you have me locked in here, and there's some stranger I could come and just bite him? And we came to Sabbath Falls. It was beautiful. It had been carved out of granite over how many years? And it was a beautiful place, but it wasn't quite there either. Too many people, cameras clicking, the cataract, the roar of the waterfall. So we just kept going. And nobody followed. We had it all to ourselves. And about a half mile further up the trail, there it was at last. A few birds we could hear, babbling of the brook. You could hear the breeze just meandering through the pines and maples. But there it was. Quietness. We all need that. Every one of us. But this is how you find it. It's not going to happen by accident. If you want to experience the quietness and stillness of God, then you have to work for it by turning down all the noise in your life, by stopping all the activities. No more tech, at least for a time. No more commitments. No more finding things to do. No more noise. No more radio. No more going to Instagram. Did somebody like me? No. And it'll come. Quietness. But you have to be still long enough for your heart to stop its racing and your breath to quiet and your mind to stop churning and your restless leg to calm down. And in that moment, you'll experience it. The love of Christ filling the crevices of your soul. And then you'll hear it. The still small voice of God whispering to you that He loves you, that He's with you.